Welcome to the Lady Landlords podcast, where we empower women to gain financial independence through real estate investing. I'm your host, Becky Nova, founder of Lady Landlords. If you're ready to buy, manage, and grow your real estate portfolio, then let's get started.
Have you ever said, I really want to buy a rental property, but no, I am not ready just quite yet? If so, you are not alone. Welcome to today's episode on the Lady Landlords podcast. We are going to be focusing on what are the 5 factors that you want to have ready that will show you really are ready to go out and get that very first rental property. Now, this was something that, I'll be honest, completely held me back when I first started. When the idea of buying a property first popped up for myself, it was actually because of my husband, Emilio. We were still dating back at that time. We were living in a 6th floor walk-up in the South Bronx. And for my husband, it was incredibly important for him that we were able to buy our own property. He immigrated to the United States when he was about 18 years old. It was very important for him to own property, and he really wanted his own home. The problem, though, was that I felt that I was in no position whatsoever to actually buy a rental property. A few years before, I had actually been living in Europe. I used to own a tour company in Spain. I expanded and bought a bar in Portugal. I had a bus that took people back and forth from Spain to Portugal and vice versa. And unfortunately, though, that bar that I bought in Portugal was a horrible business idea. And I lost a ton of money and had to move back to the United States. I had now no income coming in. My credit was ruined. I had debt from the business that had collapsed. It was a disaster. And I was spending so much time and energy trying to be able to get myself out of that hole that the idea of actually going and buying a property absolutely scared me. Who was going to give me a loan? Who would actually approve me for that? It was something that I really didn't want to move forward because I was so concerned. And I got into the spot where I felt like I needed to learn everything about financial literacy and how money worked and how investments worked. Oddly enough, I kind of skipped how real estate investing worked, but I was so obsessed and involved in how money worked. And that was really something that had held me back because I wasn't even thinking about the process of real estate investing. What ended up happening was it took time to go through, well, I don't know about this, I don't know about this, but no, I don't have all the answers to this. And it really stopped me from getting that very first property. I had to get to a spot where I understood, listen, I'm going to need some outside support, but I have all of these other factors really put into place. And it's time for really me to be able to make some moves. So that's what I want to talk to you about. If you feel that you are somebody that has been stuck in analysis paralysis, if you are somebody that keeps waiting for the stars to align, if you keep saying, well, if this was perfect, or I knew more about this, or if this was even better, then you'd be ready to invest in real estate. This is the episode for you because we're going to break down these 5 signs. And I think you're going to realize you are closer to being ready to buy your first rental property than you ever imagined. Sign number 1 is that you have your financial house in order. We have to make sure that we are in a good space for this. We don't want to go out and be investing if we don't have our funds put together. One of the hardest things for me, especially after losing that business that I had in Portugal, was to be able to really look at my bills, to look at my credit. I feel like I would get that letter in the mail that was stamped like second notice, and I was like, well, we could just throw that away. They'll just send me a third notice. No, we have to pull off the Band-Aid, okay? We have to really be able to look at those things. We have to understand our own financial situation so that way we can go ahead and figure out how to improve it. But you are closer to being able to invest. You can mark that, check that box off if you feel that you have your financial house in order. Now, what does that mean to have your financial house in order? You have an emergency fund. You have debt that is in a manageable place. Okay, that you'll be able to get loans, that you'll be able to even move forward with the purchase. And also you have a good credit score. Okay, you don't need perfect credit. You don't need 0 debt. I feel like I hear that all the time. So let's put some numbers to this. 1, Credit, you really want to be, it has to start with a 6, I'll tell you that. But really you want to be somewhere around a 650 plus to be able to start investing, because rates are just going to be very different there. If you're under that 650, I'm sorry, but you're going to be paying so much extra in interest because of what your credit score is. Focus on them where your credit is. Okay. Also with debt, I hear people all the time being like, well, I have to get down to zero debt. You don't. If you think about it, every month, if you are a person that puts things on credit cards, even if you pay it off at the end of the month, throughout then the month, you have debt because you haven't paid off that bill. It's going to be okay. There are some debts that are going to be okay, that as long as you're paying them, as long as you're making them on time, and as long as they're not like clearly exorbitant, you still will be able to get started. What's really important is looking at what's called your DTI, which is your debt to income ratio. So if you feel that you have your financial house in order, if you spent time in that space, then you can check that box that you're a little bit closer to being ready to invest in your first property. Sign number 2 that you are ready to go buy your next rental property is if you understand what your goals are with real estate. I feel like I see this often with women saying, well, I just want financial freedom. I want to be able to quit my job. Well, we need to get really clear on what those goals mean, okay? We need to understand, well, how much money do we need to be able to quit our day job? What does financial freedom actually mean? Because your definition of financial freedom is going to be different than mine. So we want to get really close on what we're looking to accomplish. Also, if you're looking to, hey, I want to have passive income so I can go travel and I just need cash flow coming in, well, that's a very different goal from, hey, I want to become the #1 flipper in the United States and I want to create a new job, a new career through real estate investing. You're going to have different strategies. You're going to have different plans. You need to make different decisions. So getting very clear up front on what it is that you're looking to accomplish with real estate and what real estate is going to do in your life is going to be incredibly important, okay? So we want to make sure that we first start with that intention. What is the specific goal? And I want you to write this out. Take 2 minutes at the end of this podcast here and just write down a sentence or two on what you were looking to get out of real estate. And do that and put numbers to it, put dates to it, put clarity. If you just write like, I want generational wealth, well, that's not very attainable because we don't know what that is. Make sure to get very, very clear and get a little more specific on what that's going to look like, okay? If you know what you are looking for, I need $5,000 a month to replace my 9-to-5 income, and I want to do that by December 31st of 2026, cool. You can check off this box for number 2 as a sign that you are closer to being ready to buy your first rental property. Now, sign number 3, you've started to do market research. If you have some idea of what you're actually looking for, this journey is going to be so much easier. Often I'll speak with lady landlords and they're saying, well, I can invest in Massachusetts. I can invest in New York. Hey, maybe I'll go invest where you do, Becky, and down in the Dominican Republic. Maybe I'll invest in California. Maybe I'll do this. Well, if you're in a spot where you have so many of those different options, we need to start narrowing that down. This also is going to make a difference if you're a person saying, if you want to look out of state, if you want to look local, if you want to look at short-term rentals, if you want to look at long-term rentals, mid-term rentals. If you have not decided on those, we need to start doing some of that homework. This is where that research is a good thing to be able to do. You want to make sure that you understand the type of property that you're going to buy, a single family versus a multifamily. So that way you can really understand those basics of deal analysis. You do not need to be an expert at this stage, okay? But that profile, that picture of what you're going to be looking to do in real estate needs to get a little bit clearer, okay? This really complements sign number 2 that I just talked about having your goal. Because now we'll have a strategy. Now we can put together what the actual steps are because we know what you want to accomplish. Your strategy in number 2 sign that I just went over should really be dictating what this market looks like, what your strategy looks like, what type of property you are looking for, okay? If that's something that you're saying, I feel really lost on strategy, that's a place where you feel not so confident and need some support there, feel free to reach out to me. We have a program where I do a strategy session and actually build out a blueprint for you, with you, on the exact steps you need to take. So feel free to shoot me an email at becky@lady-landlords.com, and happy to walk you through what a strategy session with me would look like. But if you have that already in place, if you feel that you already have clarity on what those steps are and what those things are that you need to do and where, well, you can check off that box for sign number 3. Sign number 4 is all about team building. Now that you know where you're investing and what your property you're going to be buying and what your strategy is, let's get the right people on your team. If you're looking around and you're like, yep, I already know the realtor I'm going to use. Yep, I already have a lender. Maybe you've even got them pre-approved. If you're in there and you're like, I use the Lady Landlords Facebook community on a regular basis, I know I have support there. If you have those things around you, well, you might just be ready to actually go out and start shopping for properties. Now, you have that community. If you are listening to this podcast right now, you are not alone. You have people around you to support you. You have that community in your corner, okay? So this is going to be another box you could check off. If you're looking around and you're saying, hey, nope, I'm in analysis paralysis, but yet you have that team in place in the very market for the very right strategy within the price point that you know your financial house can support, well, you now have 4 check marks and you're ready to take action. But I know that that is not as easily done as said, and that is sign number 5, okay? If you finally are in that place where you're saying, you know what, I am more afraid of just staying where I am and not accomplishing anything and staying stuck and not making any moves, and that to me is actually riskier than actually taking that leap, taking those calculated steps, following your proven plan, well, then you're ready to go. And this one, I actually think, is probably one of the hardest signs that is out there because it really requires that mindset shift. I talk to so many lady landlords that have all these perfect pieces into place. They have the money, they have the market, they have the opportunity, they have the knowledge, but fear from themselves actually holds them back. They are getting in their own way. And a lot of times, unfortunately, they have all that knowledge, but if you do not use the knowledge, who cares? If you don't have the confidence to actually go out there and do that, to take the action, to take those steps, all that knowledge is just completely wasted. Then I'm going to have to put you in that category of the same member that I talk to every single year, every couple of months. Oh, yep. Next year is going to be my year. I'm going to buy the property next year. Yup. Next year I should be able to buy that property. Yup. The next year I'm going to do it. And then here we are. We've had Lady Landlords for 5 years, and there's still a ton of members that I have known personally for years that still have not bought their very first property. Now, we don't want to go out and make bad decisions. We don't want to go out and we're not going to go and just throw something on the wall and hope it sticks. No. The action, calculated decisions, having that knowledge is what creates confidence, not the other way around. Right now, we need to focus on simply taking that first step. So I hope these 5 signs do help you and realize that you are actually closer than you think. And it's totally okay if you're like, yep, I got checks for 2 or 3 of those items, but not the other 2 or so. That's okay. That now shows you where you should focus. If you're sitting there saying, yep, my finances are in good place, but I have no idea what I want to accomplish in real estate, you now have an assignment. You now know your next step of what you have to be working on, okay? So let me know down in the comments. Let me know down in that space what you are working on, where you are, if you got 5 checks, or if you're a person that's saying, hey, I now know this space that I have to improve upon, because we are not in a place where we want to wait for perfection. Perfection in life just does not exist. What we want to make sure that we do is still to have calculated decisions to be able to move forward confidently, okay? So I hope this helped. I hope this was something that showed you that really buying real estate is so much more tangible, and you were so much more closer to getting that very first rental property than you felt you were. If you still need more support, do know that we have the Lady Landlords Beginner's Guide to Real Estate Investing. So if you ever need support on what those steps are and really breaking down to get the education you need, feel free to reach out to me. Once again, my email is becky@lady-landlords.com, and I'm happy to share some information. You can also find the link down in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining me today for this episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. Please do make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. We release new episodes every single Tuesday. See you all back in the Lady Landlords Facebook group.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlords.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.